Cross Politic begins in 3, 2, 1.
I'm a heart that breaks for a dying city.
Stop cursing your future.
Is not true.
For all intents and purposes, I am a woman.
No government, no political system has ultimate supremacy. Jesus is King of Kings, and it's about time our nation returned in humble submission to his lordship.
You are not protecting women. You are authorizing the destruction of 500,000 little women every year.
But I didn't start it. But sir, with all due respect, that's the argument of a 5-year-old. I didn't start it.
Right, when the Spirit comes upon people, they go to war, they go to battle, and the enemies of God are driven back and they're slaughtered.
You are listening to Cross Politic with Gabe Wrench, the Water Boy, Pastor Toby Sumter, and the Chocolate Knox.
Welcome y'all to Cross Politic Studios. Thank you for joining us. Choc Knox.
Hey.
Toby.
Yo. He's in the studio.
He's in the studio. He's engaging with us. We got two in a row.
Two in a row, guys.
Thank you.
Soak it up.
I miss you when you're not here.
Soak it up.
You know, I'm just saying.
Man, I'm glad it's spring. That's all I care about right now.
It's warming up.
Well, God gave us a great winter. I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm thankful for it.
I saw my first sunset in
Rejoice
like 6 months.
at all times, Gabriel.
That's right. That's right. I was in a dark trial for 6 months.
It was just a season.
Did your front yard turn into a lake?
Oh man, have you guys driven past my yard?
Well, I saw Mountain View. Did you guys see Mountain View?
No.
Mine was very similar.
It was like mostly underwater.
I took a picture. I put that on Facebook.
Was it you?
Yeah, that was me.
Somebody. I don't remember.
Yeah, my so I got a pond in my front acreage.
Yeah.
I live on 10 acres and I got a pond in front, and it overflowed and turned my front property basically into a lake.
Oh,
lakefront property, man. I should have sold the house right then.
First world problem.
I could do it, but apparently I also have a beaver, and it ate one of my trees out there. The tree is falling over one of my good trees, man.
That's just God providing for the beaver.
Get out your shotgun.
Well, it's pretty far.
Come on, Texas.
You couldn't hit a beaver from where my house is at, so you got to go. You really got to go out there.
Oh.
So.
The beaver's the least of our problems right now.
I know. That's me and David talking about.
We got other problems. We got
Supreme Court nominee Gorsuch. So we're gonna get into this, and let's go ahead and get into it right now. Maybe you guys have been following Donald Trump's Supreme Court nomination that the liberals keep thinking that was Garland's spot. They keep saying Obama's nominee was Garland.
Who's in office right now?
What do you mean? Who's in office?
President? Who's president of the United
Trump.
States? Oh, so Obama's not in office.
But like on
I'm just making sure I got that right.
Like on Huffington Post, they said Obama's nomination is getting basically his legs cut under him, and Gorsuch is getting the nomination now. So they keep referring to that. That was even recent over this last week.
They're like kind of like rubbing it in.
That's what they're doing.
Wow.
So let me. I hope you guys. We're going to spend the next probably 15 minutes kind of giving you guys a tour of some of his comments and talking about what Gorsuch has been saying in his review and nomination process.
So hold on to something tight.
Yeah, hold on tight here. Let's start here. He's going back and forth with Feinstein. Ugh. California. I can't even say her name right.
Hold yourself together,
hold
Gabe.
yourself.
All right.
But listen to this.
Can't prejudge that litigation.
No, I'm just asking you, do you agree with his statement? Yes or no?
Are the statements out of the Heller decision from the United States?
Justice Scalia's statement.
Well, whatever's in Heller is the law, and I follow the law. Well, it's not a matter of agreeing or disagreeing, Senator, respectfully. It's a matter of it being the law.
Now, I think it's an amen to one extent on what he's saying, right? He's saying this is what the law is, and this is how judges judge. We aren't impartial, and we don't use our emotions.
We are impartial.
We are impartial. Excuse me, and we stay away from our emotions of how we feel about that law.
Right. Doesn't matter what the personal opinion is.
To an extent.
Right.
To an extent, right? Like, so I amen like the first part of it, but then like the back end, when I walk away from that comment, I still am like, well, we'll get in this conversation later. What if abortion's legal? What do we do as judges? We as judges, we don't uphold unholy laws.
Well, that's the thing. We're missing the presupposition that's behind all this. Right. That's the foundation of this. Is okay. Yes, you are right, but whose law are we talking about? Man's law or God's law? Now, if we're talking about God's law, sir, I am with you. Absolutely. But when we're talking about man's law, that has to take and bend the knee to what God has said about the subject. Now, look, here's a problem right now. He can't. He cannot say that and not have a backlash or lose a position, right? He's going to get hit harder for saying something like that. So he's trying the best he can to play the game.
But I mean, like I agree with him, like
sure,
to an extent,
sure.
And but because I have such a distrust for someone who's in that situation, answering those questions and saying something that I would agree with on at face value.
Yeah.
But I distrust because I ultimately kind of what you're pointing at is like I don't believe you're really defending the presupposition that you should be defending when you make that comment in the first place.
Let's say
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but let's say he says, listen, the only law that matters is God's law. And every law that butts against that or conflicts with that, that's how I'm going to rule. I'm going to rule based on what God's standard is.
Right.
Now, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to look at that and say, yay, rah, rah, I'm with you. And
well, they would say that's not constitutional.
And then that's...
Show me the Constitution where that...
Right. And now that... And look, we need to have that conversation.
Right.
As Christians, we need to have that conversation. Is this the place for him to have that conversation right now?
Yeah.
When he's trying... Look, most of the times when you go to get a job or let's say you're trying to find a new apartment and you know you kind of qualify, you kind of don't, and you know these people kind of, if you're going to try your best to be as political as you can,
as qualifiable
as you can to say they have no reason to not hire me.
And isn't that how we got here?
And that, you know what?
Yeah.
Bro,
Come on.
I almost gave you my credit card to take an offer.
Come on. Come on.
Yes, that's right. Playing the game.
So let me play this now.
There is a statement which you made in that book, which has been often quoted, and I want to make sure that I quote it accurately here today. It relates to the taking of life.
Oh, take your time.
And I quote, "The intentional taking of human life by private persons is always wrong."
Amen. Woo!
That was a statement that you included in your book.
Amen.
Correct?
I believe so.
I believe so, too. How could you square that statement with legal abortion?
Uh-oh.
Senator, as the book explains, the Supreme Court of the United States has held in Roe versus Wade that a fetus is not a person for purposes of the 14th Amendment. And the book
Neither
explains
was a slave.
that.
Do you accept that?
That's the law of the land. I accept the law of the land, Senator, yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
The unborn person doesn't have constitutional rights.
Unborn person.
A fetus is not a person for purposes of the 14th Amendment.
Wait. Why does he sound like Hillary?
Well, that was someone edited that video.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, though, the comments sound like they can live together. Why does he sound like Hillary?
Right, so one of the questions you ask back is, in April 1857, was slavery the established law of the land? Dred Scott versus Sanford, March 6, 1857, said that those black men, women, children whose ancestors were imported into the United States and sold as slaves could not be American citizens.
Yep. And therefore they didn't have personhood in the U.S.
And they had no standing to sue for their freedom in federal court. Yep. Was that the established law of the land?
Absolutely.
And, so you ask the question of somebody who's being vetted to be the Supreme Court justice, right? The same question.
Yeah.
It's established law. Does that mean it should not be overturned?
Yeah. Right.
But so play the Gorsuch advocate here. He's answering the legality. That's what he's been tasked to answer.
Right.
And that's how he keeps responding. All his answers are, I don't care how I feel. What does the law say?
Right.
That it bothers me how he's answering these questions. But in one sense, he could be being innocent as a dove.
But but here's the thing. Look, Christian, we are going to have to fight at one place or another.
Right.
The fight doesn't get any easier or any less engaging if you get in.
Right.
The fight is the same even at the beginning as it is in the middle as it is at the end. So you're going to have to say, I'm going to have to choose to fight here and die on this hill.
Right.
But what if they're trying to pretend to be, the Nazi general who puts on the uniform and gets in and can take out Hitler, which happened, which was attempted, which was tried.
I think that's a problem of making an exception a rule.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody, because when you do that, you start making exceptions rules.
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
And then everyone's trying to put on the other team's uniform.
It doesn't work.
Ends up wearing it for good.
It just doesn't work. And I think that's why I said earlier, isn't that how we got here?
Yeah, exactly.
I think we have
one exception after another.
We have cowardly people, cowardly Christians who keep saying, I'm going to do that really hard, crazy thing.
Yep.
I'm going to put that uniform on. I'm going to pretend. And they keep not delivering.
Yep.
And they keep not delivering, and they don't even die in the process.
Yeah.
There's no martyrs.
There's no sacrifice.
Right. So I mean, if you put the uniform on and then you got caught, and you got executed, then okay, right? But where are all the martyrs? Where are all the people?
Wow. That's great.
We act like that God can't bring revival because you didn't get in.
Right.
Right. We act like, so if the guy says, you know what, I'm sorry to tell you guys this. Well, actually, I'm not, but that is not the way that God looks at things. Right. The law of the land is in violation of God's standard.
Yep.
And what if that sends like reverberations through the nation? People are saying, whoa, we got to think biblically.
And here's the thing, like, we just elected Donald Trump.
Come on now.
We just elected Donald Trump.
For real.
Bill Clinton II, by the way.
We just elected Donald Trump. You know, and the thing is he keeps saying whatever he thinks and he doesn't care.
That's right.
And we all know he's saying dumb things and silly things and crazy things, but we just elected Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, if God has given us a moment
to say something,
to be bold,
crazy,
to say something and just smile and say, I don't care.
Yeah.
I think, what are you waiting for? Right. And then you think about Daniel and his friends in Babylon.
Yeah.
Right. You know, they want to do their jobs well. Yeah. Right. But they're not going to compromise. They're not going to pretend to bow down.
Yeah.
They're not going to pretend like, can we, we don't eat this food, but can you do it under the table?
What if I just tie my shoelaces when I get on my knees?
But they say no. This is we're going to honor God's law. This is who we are.
Yeah.
I think there's a good chance that Gorsuch is playing the game.
Of course.
I think there's a good chance that is conservative and has biblical values.
USA conservative.
I just think that we've got to stop playing that game though.
Yeah. And Daniel and his buddies didn't get the job from being soft.
Preach.
They didn't get the job. They didn't get. It was because he was honest with the king about his dream.
That's right. That's
right.
The only one.
The only one who was on. Well, only one who really knew.
Right. But that means risking lions' dens and fiery furnaces.
And Daniel, I think we're exactly in that place that you're talking about. We're not we think that we're in a higher place than the dungeon.
No.
We're so close, guys.
No.
We're in the dungeon.
We're in the dungeon.
We're not risking anything.
No. Yeah. We're already losing.
We're already under judgment. Why not be honest and truthful about the situation?
Yeah.
And then, we're not doing, as a witness, we're not doing our opponents any favors by not dropping the truth on them.
Yeah, we need to drop the truth right in their faces.
That's right. So
you asked me right before the show if there's been anything on my heart today.
Yes, please preach, Pastor.
So I told you.
Wait. Do I need to get the organ ready?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'll just go ahead. You start.
It's just on my heart. I have no idea if it's organ worthy at all, but it actually connects here.
Okay.
But I'm thinking this morning. The thing is I think that it needs to bother us as Christians a whole lot more that we don't have as nearly as many enemies as Jesus.
Man. Yeah.
Right? How come our Lord is hated so fiercely and we have so many friends? Right?
Yeah.
Because we're afraid.
We're afraid, and we're like the disciples. We don't believe.
Yeah, we don't believe.
We were just talking right before the show about I'm doing this Bible study in downtown on the Gospel of John, and in John chapter 2, so we have the wedding in Cana, which is Jesus' first sign, and then right after that sign, what does Jesus go do? He goes and ransacks the temple.
Right.
Here's his ministry debut.
Right.
And he goes and ransacks the temple. How many seminary students do we encourage? Go make a stink.
Right.
I want the first thing you do, I don't want you to preach a sermon. I want you to go and raise some hell for the gospel.
So, taking this back,
but we're told it's a bad testimony. It's a bad witness.
You're a little youthful.
We're gonna lose an audience. You're
gonna get slandered.
Right.
People are gonna blog about that temple incident.
Yeah.
Let me bring in this last video.
Oh, go ahead,
and we'll go from there.
This just got real sober. All of a sudden, I'm like,
this got heavy. Let's play this last video from Gorsuch.
Your views of marriage equality changed, if at all, since the 2004 election?
Please,
Senator, my personal views. If I were to begin speaking about my personal views on this subject, which every American has views on, would send a misleading signal to the American people that
It's settled law.
It is absolutely settled law. There's ongoing litigation about its impact and its application right now. And I cannot begin to share my personal views without suggesting mistakenly to people.
Can I move on to something else then? Thank you. I understand. You've given a version of this answer before, so I understand.
There's an idol in the room.
Yeah.
There is an idol in the room. The idol is law. Right? The idol.
Man's law.
Human
man's
law.
That's
right.
law.
That's right. And that's what he keeps, he's like, hey, God has said, right? That's what he keeps saying. God has said, and so I'm going to rule according to what God has said here as far as.
And here's the thing.
The Supreme Court ruled, guys.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Like, the liberals don't believe that. The liberals are using that.
That's right.
But they don't believe that. They have an agenda that pushes way beyond man's law.
Yep.
They're using it. And the conservatives are backed into the corner and bowing to this idol.
Yep.
But they ought not to be doing that. They ought to be pushing back and revealing the lies and the hypocrisy of the left.
Right. Because your personal views may or may not matter.
Right. I mean,
they actually probably do matter.
Right. Yeah.
In that very instance.
I mean, you ask Hillary, ask Barack, ask any of the leftists a decade ago.
Yeah.
What are their views? And they would say, well, no, marriage between one man and one woman, that's the settled law of the land.
Yep.
And here's the thing too. Do we really want to
which Hillary just said.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But do we really want to trust a man that's willing to betray his conscience? Yeah. That's what he's saying when he's saying that. He's saying, hey guys, my personal views on this
don't matter.
Well,
so his conscience is pricked.
Which is true, except that then he appeals to man's law.
Exactly. Yeah.
Rather than saying, my views don't matter, but God has said.
Yeah, right.
Which is true. I mean, my view doesn't matter. God's view matters.
Because all the personal views have shaped the law that he's now defending.
Right.
And so what do you mean personal views don't matter?
Yeah.
Right. They're shaping the law that you're now judging on right now.
Right. Yeah, of course, let's pray he's thinks, he's doing what he's got to do to get in. He's nuancing all these words really carefully, but you know what? All these nuances, a couple of years ago, it just dawned on me that I think there's a sense in which nuance is just the place where cowards hide.
Oh my gosh!
Right,
that's the gray area problem.
Because
right?
you can just
everything's a gray area.
Just go tweet that right now.
You can just keep splitting these fine nuances, and what's so refreshing about the way Jesus talks? He speaks in generalities and universals, right?
Yeah.
He says, don't be like hypocrites. Don't go on the street corners praying. Don't be Pharisees. He just blanket statements everybody, and they were good Pharisees. There were scribes that loved God and were going to meet in heaven.
Yeah.
And he just blew them up.
Yeah.
Right. No nuance. He didn't stop and be like, now remember, I'm talking about not the bad Pharisees. I'm talking about, I'm not the good Pharisees. I'm talking about the bad ones, or the scribes that really love. No, that's not what he said.
Yeah.
He said scribes and Pharisees, y'all are a bunch of clowns.
Yeah,
right? This is actually going to come in and play with our interview.
Is it?
Yeah,
Jason Riley.
Jason Riley?
Yeah, we have Jason Riley coming on the show. Please stop helping us. How liberals make it harder for blacks to succeed. I'm looking forward to that conversation.
David, you got some thoughts about this?
I do. I have a lot of. I started doing a whole bunch of work, reading about this guy, looking up some YouTube comments about him and some interviews, and so I'm pretty excited to have him on the show. I'm hoping not to be disappointed, because what I tend to realize is that even though I love when like Thomas Sowell and these guys, they come in here with these great observations, and then before you're all done, what you end up with is a whole bunch of problems, but with no answers.
Yeah.
And then you're left there saying, "Oh, great."
Don't worry, folks. We got Chocolate Knox.
Yes, that's right.
He's got answers. He's got answers.
Hey, if we're waiting for me to give answers, we're all in trouble, buddy.
Follow us on Twitter. Email us memo@crosspolitic.
Rate us on iTunes.
Rate us on iTunes. Look us up on Facebook. Thank you for checking out our merch. We really appreciate you guys.
Back with Jason Riley next on Cross Politic.
Canon Press is a publishing house located in Moscow, Idaho. At Canon Press, we create and provide products that sketch a vision of the whole life, a whole culture, a life full of beauty, tradition, education, community, laughter, and celebration, unashamed of Christ, and sharply at odds with the values of modernity. A mature culture with the church at the center, living out the good life, one family at a time. We believe our book, audio, and visual selections reflect this exciting life that God has given us under the sun. As the wisest man said, go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already accepted your works. CanonPress.com.
For 21 years and counting, New St. Andrews College has sought to obey Christ's Great Commission to disciple nations and build him a house, not just in Jerusalem, but throughout the world. Not with stones and mortar, but with living stones. We build and fight. This is the task of a Christian liberal arts college, to equip students with the tools to build and fight. And this is our joyful task as we seek to graduate leaders who shape culture through wise and victorious living. To learn more, check us out online at nsa.edu/explore.
Welcome back, y'all, to Cross Politic. Here we are, and with us, we're really thankful to have Mr. Jason Riley. He's an editorial board member from the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
Where he has contributed since 1994. Even Salon says, quote, the American left should start paying attention to the Wall Street Journal's Jason Riley. His name is on the rise.
Wow, how did that happen?
He's the author of the book that we really want to talk to him about today, called Please Stop Helping Us, How Liberals Make It Harder for Blacks to Succeed. Jason, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Jason, when you say that liberal policies are making it hard for blacks to succeed, what are you talking about? What do you mean by that?
I'm talking mainly about the welfare state, the Great Society programs that were introduced in the 1960s, and looking at the black outcomes that have followed the implementation of those policies. And I contrast that with some of the outcomes that we saw in the first half of the 20th century with respect to racial gaps in schooling or incomes or home ownership, and the track record we saw then in the first half of the 20th century. And I concluded that although we hear a lot about the legacy of slavery when it comes to explaining racial inequality today, I think we should be more focused on the legacy of the Great Society, the legacy of the welfare state, and contributing to these racial disparities as well.
So, Jason, are you saying that the welfare state is just another form of slavery?
Well, I wouldn't put it quite that crudely, but I would say that a lot of the well-intentioned efforts to help the black underclass simply are not getting the job done. And I think we need to reevaluate how we go about helping this group of people. I mean, some of the progress that's been that we saw in the first half of the 20th century, in the 1920s and 30s and 40s and 50s, we've seen that progress either slow or in some cases reverse course in the second half of the 20th century. So I think we really need to take another look at the programs and policies that we're directing at poor individuals, and the black poor in particular.
You also get into kind of the social side of this, the community side of this, and the kind of challenges that the black culture is facing and how that's kind of contributing to the problem. Talk about that for a second.
Well, yes, I think what you've seen since the 1960s in particular in the civil rights community and just on the political left in general is a focus on enhancing black political clout, political power, electing more black officials. And the thinking has been, if we do that, socioeconomic advancement will follow naturally. And this, of course, culminated with the election of President Obama in 2008. That was the ultimate goal of this strategy. And, it wasn't, obviously, there had been black elected officials before running large cities in the U.S., from Detroit to Washington, D.C., New York, Atlanta, and so forth. So we've had black political clout to some extent success in that arena to some extent over the decades. But the presidency was really the culmination of this strategy. But you have not seen the socioeconomic gains flow naturally from increasing black political clout. So I think that strategy has not accomplished what it set out to. And if you look back at history, there was no expectation there. There should have been no expectation that it would. Other groups that have risen in this country from poverty to prosperity typically have not gone the political route. They've developed culturally. They've developed the right human capital, is how economists describe it. The right attitudes and behaviors and values have been developed first, and that has been the foundation of their rise economically, not political clout per se.
And it seems like you added to that was kind of the decline of the black family, divorce rates. And even you kind of illustrated kind of a, I wouldn't say maybe it's a disdain, but a dislike for even coming off as white and educated. You mentioned a couple examples in your book where you were made fun of for what it seemed like they would call either talking white or sounding educated. And so it kind of shakes its way out even to that kind of, it's almost like maybe this is bad terminology too, but reverse racism, where it's like you sound smart, therefore, does that make sense?
Well, it's the phenomenon is known as acting white, and it's something that you'd be hard-pressed to come across a middle-class black person in this country who has not experienced the phenomenon. And even President Michelle Obama have told stories about this. It's just extremely common that there is a sense in poor black communities in particular, sort of ghetto mentality regarding how black people are supposed to act and sound, and their values. Values towards work, towards education, towards parenting, and it's an oppositional mindset. It's an oppositional mindset, and blacks who do not conform to that mindset are made fun of. So if you are a bookish, studious kid, if you raise your hand in class, if you enjoy school, that is something that people will mock. If you use correct English, grammatical English, that is something to be mocked. And so yes, I think that is a problem in the black community. You mentioned divorce. I think it's more marriage in general, and particularly out of wedlock birth rates, where we've seen tremendous growth in that area, and that was not something you saw again in the first half of the 20th century. You go back to as late as 1960, you had 2 out of 3 black kids being raised in a 2-parent home. Today, more than 70% are not, and in some of our inner cities, it's as high as 80 or 90%, and that's I think that's a huge problem, that breakdown of the black family.
So we've kind of talked about the problem, the political problems, and kind of just touched on some of the familial challenges. What do you think is the solution in all this?
Well, I think one solution is to stop doing things we know don't work.
That's hard. That's so hard.
Well, it's not really about a new government program to solve these problems.
Absolutely.
I think that's misguided. I think we need to remember what blacks were able to accomplish in the first half of the 20th century, when at best the government's attitudes towards blacks was indifference. Yeah. Yet you saw tremendous gains being made in terms of the rate at which blacks were leaving poverty or entering the skilled professions in the middle class, increasing their years of education, both in absolute terms and relative to whites. All of this was being done in a tremendously oppressive environment racially in this country. We had legal segregation, tremendous negative attitudes towards blacks, which were very socially acceptable, yet that could not stop blacks from narrowing the gaps with whites in terms of socioeconomic progress. So this is not about reinventing the wheel. This is about getting back to doing the things that worked before, and a lot of that, I think, involves the government getting out of the way. Right now, in our things like keeping kids trapped in bad schools, for example. Right. Give poor parents access to better schools. I think minimum wage laws are misguided in the sense that they prevent a lot of less skilled, less educated blacks, less experienced blacks from getting that first job.
Yeah.
Because the minimum wage laws make them too expensive to hire.
Yeah.
So fewer of them are hired than would be hired otherwise. And you don't get that first job. You don't get, your foot on that first rung of the ladder. You don't get that experience. And so I think these, again, are well-intentioned policies that I think are doing more harm than good. Occupational licensing laws that make it difficult to drive a cab or to open a hair salon or something like that.
Let me interject.
Again, these are getting in the way of progress.
And let me interject here on these points too. I feel like when I get in these kind of discussions, I feel like a lot of it has to do with it feels like to me a lot of it's going a lot of rearranging of the furniture is what's being discussed. So maybe eliminate this policy, or maybe open up education to the a school choice and all those things. Those to me feel like very much kind of rearranging the furniture. When we introduce ourselves before we went live on the air, we talked about how we're a Christian podcast and how our solution we want to get to the heart of the matter, which is people's hearts. You can't. I mean, just giving educating a criminal, giving them education is just going to make them a better criminal. When it seems like the bigger issue is actually people's hearts need to change in all this. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would agree with that. Our jails and prisons are not full of educated people. They're not teeming with black college graduates or even black high school graduates. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways we know. One of the best ways to keep people out of the penal system is to get them to graduate from high school. The correlation between people who graduate from high school and people who stay out of trouble with the law is quite high. So I think education is a good thing, and that we should be encouraging more of it. Now you're right that you have to have the right attitudes. In other words, you can have the best school in the world down the street, but if you don't value education, it's not going to do you any good. You have to want to go there, want to sit in class, and want to learn. And that's something that's sort of outside of the parameters of public policymakers and politicians, and it's cultural. Yeah. And there are a lot of cultural defects in poor black communities that we don't like to talk about. It's a little taboo to discuss publicly. Yeah. And so we don't talk about it. But that's really, I think, is the pointing towards the solution. You need self-development to occur. The type of self-development that was occurring in the first half of the 20th century, that's been stunted to some extent, and that we need to get back to that, because that is ultimately how we're going to close these gaps that we see. It's not going to come from some government solution. It's going to come from within the community and people reassessing their value framework and getting the right attitudes and habits and behaviors in place.
Historically, of course, education has been all about the truth. Historically, education has been all about teaching human beings to be who God made them to be, calling them to pursue truth, goodness, and beauty in every way. And that's always a heart issue, just like you're saying, Gabriel. It's about the fact that human beings are made in the image of God. And so true education has always been aimed at calling people to know truly who they are, who God's made them to be. And that means grappling with all of these most significant issues. Hey, it's been great to have you on the show today. Jason Riley, the author of Please Stop Helping Us, How Liberals Make It Harder for Blacks to Succeed. Jason Riley is a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, and Salon says, you got to pay attention to this guy. Hey, it's been great having you on our show. Thank you so much, Jason. You have a great weekend.
And more Cross Politic when we come back.
This is Cy Timbergen with Answer Anyone Apologetics. Somebody comes up to you and says, I don't believe in God. And what do? We give them evidence. Look at the complexity of the eye. Look at this paper fragment. Look at these rock layers. And you've studied your rock layers. You wipe the floor with them. What's he going to do? He's going to go home and Google rock layers. You want him to repent and put his trust in Jesus Christ, and he's Googling rock layers. Congratulations. The next day you run into a PhD in geology and he wipes the floor with you. You see, when you do apologetics wrong, you have to be an expert in geology, biology, astrophysics, nuclear chemistry, you name it. You have to be brilliant. The problem is, there's always someone smarter than you. In John 10:27, Jesus did not say, my sheep hear your really good argument. He said, my sheep hear my voice. In Luke 21:15, Jesus said, I will give you a mouth and wisdom that none of your adversaries will be able to withstand or contradict. The power of God for salvation is not in your brilliant arguments. As Romans 1:16 tells us, it's in the gospel of Jesus Christ. Apologetics is easy. Read your Bible and do what it says. For more apologetic answers, visit AnswerAnyone.com.
Welcome back to Cross Politic. This segment is brought to you by Irish Death.
That's some good stuff.
Warm Irish Death.
That's
dark, smooth ale in a can, and sunflower seeds.
Ooh.
Because you know what? It's almost baseball season.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's what happens after March Madness.
It's almost baseball.
Wait, do you have March Madness on your tablet?
It's not on yet because the game starts about 3:09.
Uh-oh. Hey, so Jason Riley. All right, ready. So David.
No, don't do that.
Is this where you're going to are you going to tee him up?
No, David.
Yes.
So these guys, Walter Williams, Thomas Sowell.
No, you can't do it like that.
Jason Riley.
Oh no.
What's the thing about those guys?
We need to have people send their memos to memo@crosspolitic.com. If you heard that last interview, please send your memo to memo@crosspolitic.com. This is where you can record your thoughts or ideas or concerns and send them to us, and we'll play them on the show. Mm-hmm. Also,
and encourage us like a recent pastor did out of Michigan.
Yeah, that's
that
right.
Was super kind of him.
That was a good one. That's a good word.
Look, let me start off by saying,
are you trying to change the subject?
No. I'm going right to the topic.
Toby, that was not a very good tee up.
No, that was actually it's going to give me some trouble because, hey, I'm going to tell you right now, for Jason Riley, if Walter Williams and Thomas Sowell had a child, I think it would be Jason Riley. I mean, if they were going to produce,
that's great.
This guy would be it. I mean,
gender confusion on the Cross Politic.
I'm just saying. But I mean, he's definitely a product of those guys, and I think he even dedicates the book to Thomas Sowell.
Right.
So I mean, Thomas Sowell for me, really helped me pinpoint ideas, false concepts that I probably heard my whole life from liberals. And I think Walter Williams too, as far as the whole issue of welfare and minimum wage hikes, how they're really not helping. And I think the narrative that's told to black community and black culture and just culture abroad is that these things are actually going to help us and are helping us. And so we need to continue doing them. And Walter Williams and Thomas Sowell.
So they're doing great about pointing out the problems.
They get it, man. They really understand the problem.
Tellers.
But I remember, I think Walter Williams came on to Apologia Radio, and I was listening to that podcast, and he said, I think they asked him, hey, how do we fix this? How do we fix this? What's the answers? And he didn't have one. He said, well, we're just too far gone. Or something to the effect, well, I don't know if we can. And I sit there and I listen to that and I said, but if you know what the problem is, it's like if you say, Knox, you have a leaky faucet in your bathroom. Well, the first thing I know to do is to go turn off the water so I can fix the sink, right? Yeah. But I don't say, oh, well, dang, we just better get a new house.
Well, and this goes back to Gabe's question to Jason was, the whole education thing.
Right.
It's and if you don't
that was a good question.
If you don't.
Yes, Gabe. It was a good question.
Kudos to Gabe. But if you don't change what's being taught, if you don't change the schools, it really is rearranging the furniture, and you're just going to keep recycling this same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you change the schools, I mean, of course, government schools are, chock full of the same stuff.
Yeah. The most disappointing thing is getting done with a book like Thomas Sowell or Walter Williams, or in this case, Jason Riley. Yeah, Jason Riley, please stop helping us. The most disappointing thing for me is that the answers don't even come close to fixing the problem. If anything, it's almost depressing because there are no answers. Yeah. And so I listening.
I left the book feeling that way.
Yeah, because if the answer if the answer to our problem is going to be in the political system, then we're in trouble. Yeah. Because we really don't have any political power to do anything. It seems like all political power, if anything, corrupts the situation.
Well, so he smacks government involvement, and then what's his answer? More education. Where's that going to come from? More government, you know?
So, and to be fair to him too, I don't think he would want the government to be involved in the education as much as he want the private individual to be involved in the education.
Right.
So, but still the problem is not necessarily education. We are Christians. Our problem has to always come back, like you were saying earlier. If it is education, it's being educated about the Christ. Who is he?
Right.
Right? Education flows from truth. Who is the truth? Yeah. Jesus is the truth. He's the way, the truth, and the life. So the first response, I think, to this, if we're going to fix the problem, and I've heard him say this in maybe an interview or two before, is that black pastors and black leaders need to be speaking up about the issue and about the problem. Hey, that's true. But more than that, we need to have solid biblical churches planted in communities that don't have solid biblical teaching.
Yeah.
And that seems like such a far step from, well, black community and culture is falling off.
Yeah.
You want to go plant churches?
Well, no, but I mean, when he was talking about, the failure of marriage in the black community,
that was good.
Lack of fatherhood.
That's real.
All that stuff. I mean, that's real. And I mean, we didn't get to ask him that particular question, but I mean, I don't, maybe politically it seems like a far thing, but if you want intact marriages, intact families, who produces that?
If I have
Jesus,
that's right.
The church.
If I have a broken BMW, I don't take it to a Honda workshop to get fixed. I need to take that to the source.
Right.
And if we have, who made the family?
Right.
Who made marriage? Who made the family structure? God made that structure. Right. And if we're going those to stay together, we want those to function right. If they're broken, we need to take it to the creator of families, of marriage,
And back to the Gorsuch discussion we had even, before.
Yeah.
It's getting clearer and clearer who owns this. Because what's happening? Because the government's trying to, through their political machinations, is trying to blow this up.
Secularism,
right? Secular, right? So, but if we say marriage is one man, one woman, right, for life, take your vows, mean them, keep them.
That's right.
Be a man, love your woman, provide for your family, raise your children, love Jesus. I mean, anymore that view of marriage and family, it just is Christian.
Yeah.
Like the hypocrisy.
That's all that it is.
Because everyone else is like, well, who's to say? Maybe a man really loves another man, and maybe they don't want to have children. Maybe they want to have golden retrievers. Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
That's anymore. Like if you stand and say, no, this is what marriage is. This is what a family is.
That's right. That's right.
You're a Christian. What does that mean? It means you're part of a church.
Yep.
So if we want that, what manufacturer, so to speak, makes that model?
Yeah. Yeah, God does.
The church.
That's right.
Right.
And so if we don't have, so this goes back to, again, healthy churches, right? We need, look, I was just back, I'm trying not to get myself in too much trouble. I was just back in Minneapolis for a little bit.
A place. I was just a place.
Look, I'm not going to be like Gorsuch. I was.
Yeah, man. No nuance. Come on. Don't be nuancing.
I was back at the church that I grew up in.
What was your address?
1112 Morgan, North Minneapolis. I was back at the church that I grew up in. They just got a new building. I was helping them set up their sound system. My heart is still there in Minneapolis. I have a true passion for them. And even more so now that I was there, because I'm able to see over the last 15, 20 years now, my wife and I grew up in this church, and I'm seeing the fruit of that church laid out a little clearer. And more, the visual is painful.
Yeah.
No impact in the community and the culture.
Yeah.
More of a hiding away, no biblical theology, broken families, broken marriages. We'll preach on marriage, we'll preach on family, we'll preach on all these things, but then no substance of it. So it's just kind of like air.
Yeah.
The sermons are air. And then people are going there. They have just enough Christian thought and process so that people can get refueled enough just to make it through a work week.
Right. It's totally survival mode.
Survival mode, but not enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, nothing.
Not enough to love their spouses. I can't think of a marriage that has been successful in this environment. And so when I look at
that's fruit, the church. That's the church.
And this is not the only one that's there. There's plenty of other churches that are there that are in the exact same situation, and there's no revival happening. And we need a spark there. We need some revival happening. And when I look at the solid churches that are around there,
but you need a revival of obedience.
That's, this goes back to our midweek talk.
Yeah,
that's
right.
right now, because of the lack of men involved in the community, impacting the community, work in the community, we have a lot of women who've raised up and have taken the position because they see that it's just fallen. Right. It's fallen and the house is falling around them, and they're sitting there saying, we're not going to let this happen to us. Right. But what they're doing is adding to the problem. Right. Instead of coming in and saying, Lord, send us the leaders, send us some men, help me to raise my son, right, to be a solid man. Give me an influence of a biblical man. And they're not praying that prayer so much as they're trying to just jump in there and say, okay, let's hold up the building as it's falling. Right. And so part of me, I really my heart goes out to them trying to do this. But when you said when you said on that Wednesday clip, you said, hey, what women really need to be doing is commanding the man, say, you get up there, you be a man. Right. We need a hero right now. And it's so funny. When you said that, I was like, oh, wow. Like, that's not something that's usually taught. It's like, if you see something, you want to be like, what's his name, who went and grabbed the ark, when he wasn't supposed to?
Oh, man.
Oh, the Ark of the Covenant.
Friday. I can't remember stuff on Friday.
I know.
Oh,
someone tweet it.
Send it to memo@crosspolitic.com. But
the guy who grabbed the ark.
But we're thinking, hey, I think they're thinking, if we can get the ark before it hits the mud, then guys, we'll save this thing. Right. And we won't have a catastrophe. But what they're doing is they're doing something that's unholy. God told you how to touch the ark.
Right.
You don't.
Right. Don't do it. Yeah, right.
You make the 3 ring hoops and you put a pole through it, and that's how you carry it.
Right.
That's what you're supposed to do. So if it hits the dirt, you let it hit the dirt. Right. And so.
Yeah, it comes down to we ultimately, and we do this in so many areas, but we think we know better than God.
All the time.
Right. And we think, because we think we're aiming at the same result that he said, we think we know better. We think, well, if we get there in just a slightly different way, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And so we're all like King Saul.
Oh.
Right. We think we know better. We're like, well, we saw all these animals and we're going to offer sacrifices and so on. And Samuel says, but what is this bleeding I hear?
Uzzah.
Right.
Uzzah.
Right.
Yeah.
What who's this guy? You spared the king.
Yeah.
God told you to kill everything.
Yeah.
Right. And Saul's like, well, and he has good reasons.
Yeah.
He's a humanitarian.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like, it's for sacrifice.
God could use these sheep.
Right.
Come on, man.
And Samuel says obedience is better than sacrifice.
Yeah.
Right. Obedience is better than sacrifice. It's better to do what God said to do the way he said to do it than to come up with your own things. Right. We do this with parenting. You're like, I think I need to be a little more loving.
Yep. Yeah.
A little more gentle. And God says, just spank him.
Right. Obey that one.
Just spank
That's
him.
Real.
Right.
Yeah.
That's real.
He says that you need to worship me this way, reverence and fear. He says, all kinds of things, and we do this, we think we know better.
Yep. And we justify it.
Yeah, and we start getting embarrassed for what God says to do. Right. I was looking up this.
Why are you preaching on me?
I was trying to figure out why when women stop promising to obey their husbands. I always thought the Book of Common Prayer is kind of the service book that people that care about services go to. 1928 is the traditional one. It's not even in there. You have to go back to 1662 to find the marriage vow with the wife promising to obey her husband.
Whoa.
Right? That's the conservative one.
Wow.
This is the 1928, and it's not even in there. And you got all kinds of complementarian Christians who are embarrassed of saying that God calls their wife to obey them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, no, that's what God says.
The first thing I see people start doing is, what's the caveat?
Right. They're like, there's exceptions, right? There's exceptions, right? Well, yeah, but we're supposed to obey God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And what if?
Right. Yeah, and again, you turn exceptions into rules.
Yeah, that's right.
And nuances where cowards hide.
I'm
just going to keep saying that.
Hey, just so everybody knows, we're going to make a t-shirt about that. Nuances is where cowards hide.
Yeah.
Pastor Toby of Cross Politics. Gay, what are you doing on your phone? We're having a serious conversation over here.
I'm dealing with some home stuff that needs to be.
Is it your lake? Is it your lake?
No.
Obedience is better than sacrifice.
Look, you can let the Baptist church down the street use your lake to immerse people. So go ahead, man. That's fine. We'll just have this show without you. Is that okay?
It's okay.
Okay. So you have right now. I see, and me. I don't want to get too far into dogging out Vodi Bakum because that's my dude. But I see a lot of people dog him out, so I don't want to do that. But I do want to say that when we did the round table with him and Pastor Wilson, one of the things that I disagree with him about was that the fishing analogy that he had, and he made it seem as if you're going fishing and God gives you this kind of fish, are you going to hold it up and say, God, I don't want that kind of fish,
right?
And so that sounds good and that plays well, and I agree with him. At the same time, there's also another side of that where people are not willing to go fish in the places. They're pulling some Jonahs.
Yeah, right. And Vody might actually agree with that. I mean, I don't think he was necessarily saying don't go fishing in those other places.
No, but I think it's making it seem as if we're the ones who are condemning, or I guess in my case, the one who was responding to him at the time, that I'm condemning the fact that God has given fish, and I'm mad that they're not black people. And that's not I don't want that picture painted at all. I'm a Christian.
Right. But his point wasn't that you fish in the neighborhood you're in.
Sure.
And so, I mean, so if you're in like an 80% black neighborhood and all you're pulling in is white people.
Yeah. There's a
then you're like, okay, well, what are you fishing with?
Yeah, but
change your bait, man.
But I think that our problem is far more, a little more complicated than that, and far more complex. We are actually actively seeking outside. We don't want to go. I mean, guys, I'm telling you, people are actively trying to find churches outside of certain areas because they don't want to be there. And that's a problem. Yeah. And I guess I wanted him to acknowledge the fact that is a real problem, and we need to speak to that problem too, not just the fact.
But that's a problem. But why? I mean, you can't just stay in a blanket way. I mean, people are actively finding schools outside their neighborhoods because there's a problem at the school.
Yeah, the school and the church are two different institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't change the fact that there's problems at this church, so I need to drive.
That's not necessarily the case. That's not necessarily the case. I mean, all things being equal, if there is a good church, a good solid church, we will drive the opposite way just because of the fact that we don't like the culture that's there. And I'm trying to say we don't get to choose a church based on culture.
Yeah, and
that's my whole point.
I'm just saying I need more information.
But I would say this though. I would say that's true, but we should choose a church based on truth.
All things being equal,
integrity,
absolutely,
all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
If you right, so if it is a cultural difference,
that's my point. I think a lot of it is, guys. The people who are making these choices to go to a different church are not having theological issues. They're not. They're having cultural problems that they don't want to deal with, right? And so, and not just that, but when being a part of the PCA, when I would see us run to plant churches in every part of the country, but not right down the road 30 miles away in the middle of Atlanta. And I'm saying, look, guys, we don't even have to train missionaries for 2 years to learn another language. Why don't we just send them like 30, 50 miles away and plant right there? And so, and the truth is that we think that those planting a church and locally to us affects even our environment.
Yeah. Well, ministry always looks good over there.
Yeah, I think there is something to that. I think there's something to everyone. You always feel like the grass is greener on the other side. And I think people are, again, go back. I'm just going to keep calling everybody cowards today. we're all a bunch of cowards. But the church, like the fact I think common culture is another place where people like to hide.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit easier. You can kind of blend in and you don't have to fight.
Yeah. It's hard.
As much.
It's hard.
And so, but the fact is that actually you should be fighting more. Even if you are in a fairly homogeneous culture, you should be fighting more. There's a lot more there that you need to address than you probably think. In which case, why drive so far?
Yeah.
Why
you got a good church right down the road.
Why not dig in down the street?
Yeah.
You're called to fight.
Yeah. Amen.
And laugh.
and feast. Yeah. Please go memo@crosspolitic.com, iTunes. Please go and leave a comment there on iTunes and rate us. We appreciate it. Until next week, go fight, laugh, and feast.